sister, mother, brother, shout for joy. We're going on a journey to Jerusalem. So many, many sinners seek a rest if you will find, or you're gonna be one of them. Somebody sing hallelujah, somebody say amen. There's a joy on the journey to Jerusalem. Somebody say hallelujah, somebody say amen. The road is short to all of God's children, 'cause we are one heart, one mind. We seek the truth and find it in Jerusalem. One faith, one God. Blessed are the feet that walk the road to New Jerusalem. The road to the Lord is a straight and narrow street. His love is free, it's heaven's gift for you and me. There are those who will sow, it is they who will reap. So, put one foot in front of the other. We all got to help one another. If we're gonna make Jerusalem brother, we've got to move it on.
Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, a city that is 3,000 years old, a city where in the course of history everything has changed and yet nothing has changed. Good evening, I'm David Crabtree, and welcome. For the next half hour, we're going to take you on a very special journey to the Holy Land. During that time, we'll visit some of this country's more famous religious shrines, but we'll also show you a side of Israel you have never seen. We'll meet North Carolinians here for a religious pilgrimage, and North Carolinians here for an economic pilgrimage. Join us now for a very special journey to the Holy Land.
One heart, one mind. We seek the truth and find it in Jerusalem. One faith, one God. Blessed are the feet that walk the road to New Jerusalem.
The mystery and beauty of this ancient country are evident with each new day. There are times you can almost hear Old Testament prophets crying in the wilderness. 500,000 people call Jerusalem home, as do the world's three great religions, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. From almost any point in this complex city, you'll see this, the gleaming gold from the Dome of the Rock inside the walls of the Old City. It's sacred to Muslims. They believe it's where Allah ascended. For Christians and Jews, it's where Abraham was about to sacrifice Isaac, and the site of Solomon's temple. And not too far from this temple is a temple of education with a North Carolina influence. This is the Frankel Elementary School. The morning devotional is led by 10-year-old Yuri. Unlike most of his classmates, he is autistic.
Many of the kids are able to note the differences between themselves and others, and they want to have friends, they want to be part of the mainstream.
Lee Marcus has traveled 8,000 miles to the Frankel School, but back home at UNC Chapel Hill, Lee Marcus helps to mainstream autistic students and prepare them for a productive adult life. His program is well established in North Carolina, and 2 years ago, Dr. Marcus felt called to take it to the Holy Land, where the needs are the same.
They continue to show the basic problems of autism, and things that really stand out are relationships with their peers, other children their age.
So did you have a good day at school, Moshe?
One of Lee's students is Moshe Fishman. Moshe's father, Joel, was born in Winston-Salem. He and his wife, Rivka, are seeing progress.
His approach is one of structure and of routine, and which helps the child adjust in the world, and it's very, very important.
3 slices, slosha brusod.
Like most 10-year-olds, Moshe is high energy. He helps with the lunchroom. He also listens as his dad teaches him English.
Are you ready?
And he rebels slightly by answering in Hebrew.
Let's bring this home, Moshe. When Moshe comes home, and many children come home after a day of discipline at school, they have to unwind a little bit, and this is sort of a transitional time.
In Tel Aviv, transition time for another of Marcus's autistic students is different. 10-year-old Ished showed great interest in the piano when he was 6. His grandmother is his teacher, and together they travel an eloquent educational path. His talent evident, as is the joy of his accomplishments. And for Lee Marcus, taking his North Carolina knowledge to these students almost halfway around the world has become one of the great rewards of his life.
Just watching that prayer service this morning is, that's a prayer service I'm very familiar with at home. And here it is with these kids, including some autistic children, including this boy who's leading a prayer service. It's really, it's just very meaningful.
Head west from Jerusalem, and within an hour, you're in Tel Aviv. This was only a sand dune 75 years ago. The country's largest city is bordered by the Mediterranean, and with its palm trees and high-rise hotels, it looks familiar. It feels like South Florida, until you walk by the flowers at this monument to Yitzhak Rabin. A few miles away, we found an even more familiar-looking sight. This is an area of high technology. It's described as being very rich with professionals, rich with PhDs, located near major universities, near the airport. We're surrounded by fertile farming land, but this is not the Research Triangle Park. In fact, we're about 8,000 miles from home because this is the Weizmann Science and Technology Park, located just outside of Tel Aviv. These buildings house hundreds of small offices called incubators, where new ideas are hatched. Many of those ideas come from some of the 500,000 Russian immigrants who moved to Israel a few years ago. One idea, financed with North Carolina dollars, is to be used on local dairy farms. And the idea came from this man, Dr. Roman Feldberg. So with this system, a dairy farmer within 30 seconds could know the amount of bacteria in his product.
Yes.
After milk is taken from North Carolina dairy cows, that process normally takes 36 hours. The Israeli invention, now owned by a Monroe, North Carolina company, has the potential to substantially extend the shelf life of milk. The original use for this product was for blood plasma, but when Governor Hunt visited Israel in 1995, one of his team members saw something else.
I remember sticking my hand up and saying, "What about milk?" He said, "Well, we don't think there's a market for milk." And I said, "Well, I disagree. I'd like to have you come visit North Carolina State and talk to some dairyman friends of mine." And he did, and we did, and kind of the rest is history.
When we come back, why North Carolina natives decide to make a permanent move halfway around the world. Do you ever get homesick?
Yeah, all the time. I get homesick a lot. I mean, there's not a day that doesn't go by that I don't think about being home.
These sun rays bring life to the Dead Sea. At 1,300 feet below sea level, this is the lowest place on Earth. One of the surrounding villages is Qumran, where 50 years ago, 2 shepherds lowered themselves into this cave looking for lost sheep. Instead, they found something else inside large jars of clay.
Opening those lids, they were in a way disappointed that all they found was just some weird-looking sort of aging parchments with some weird writing on it. Not knowing what they're holding in their hands, they took it to Bethlehem and they sold it to one of the local antiquity dealers, a man called Kandu, for 20 English pounds.
Those papers became known as the Dead Sea Scrolls, the oldest manuscript of the Old Testament ever found. Further north, beyond the wildflowers and mountain range known as the Golan Heights, is the Galilee region. For Christian religious pilgrims, this region is a must.
This is the cradle of Christianity. All the major events in the life of Jesus and his ministry took place somewhere around the shores of the lake.
As in many areas of the Holy Land, tourism is a big moneymaker. There are constant reminders all around. There's no business like God's business. And we were all surprised to hear this familiar anthem on one of the boats touring the Sea of Galilee.
I sense a little bit too commercialized. But maybe that's because I'm a cynical person, I don't know.
Does the commercialism bother you?
No, not at all, no, not at all.
It's still the location.
Yes, yes. I really enjoy it.
Do you know about Jaffa, Old Jaffa?
That enjoyment led Horace Richter of Mount Gilead, North Carolina, to settle in the ancient port of Jaffa some 30 years ago. This is where Jonah set sail for Nineveh and had his run-in with a whale. Richter opened an art gallery and never looked back. And even the unrest in the Middle East never made him think about returning home.
I have many Arab friends, and I understand the tragic situation here, and I'm not frightened, no.
I mean, it's something new every day that you have to experience.
Lisa Hand followed her heart and moved from the Triangle to Jerusalem for love. Soon she'll marry Yair Baveh, whom she met when the two worked together in Raleigh.
The truth is, I really believe in the connection between me and Lisa. So far, with any obstacle that came up, we were able to go through it quite easily.
A potential obstacle, Lisa is Roman Catholic, Yair Jewish. At first, their families were concerned.
They know that we're both good people, and they know that whatever we decide with faith and our religion, that we'll do the right thing. And we have faith in each other, and our families have faith in us, so it's all that really matters.
The marketplace in Jerusalem on Good Friday. It's a day to shop for the weekend. Lots of evidence here. This is the land of milk and honey.
Everything here is beautiful, very fresh, right?
Israel, North America. Israel.
As we left the marketplace, police were beginning to clear the area because of a bomb threat. Threats of violence on Good Friday led to heavy security most everywhere. Soldiers were perched atop the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And there was heavy security along the Way of Sorrows, the Via Dolorosa, where Christian pilgrims walk what's believed to be Jesus' walk to his crucifixion.
A lot of the huge crowd that you see here today along the Via Dolorosa is security. Security is very tight throughout the entire country, particularly here in Jerusalem in the Old City.
Before the day was over, more than 100,000 people had journeyed through these narrow passageways. On Easter Sunday, one of the quietest places in Jerusalem is the Garden Tomb. Many believe this is the ancient tomb where Jesus was buried. The English gardens are some of the most magnificent in the city. A stone's throw away, rock that resembles a skull. This is Golgotha. Beneath it, a filthy city bus station.
Jesus was crucified in what was probably the garbage dump. He was crucified in shame and dishonor, and of course there was the contrast that he was buried then in a rich man's garden in a place of honor.
And on this Easter of 1997, there are no tears of joy in Bethlehem, only canisters of tear gas over the city. The American presence in the Holy Land is felt most every day and every night. The American-born sport of basketball has become increasingly popular here. Most Carolina fans probably weren't aware the Heels battles were watched in the same country that's seen countless battles, holy crusades, and unholy occupations.
Well, bless my soul, what's wrong with me?
Most American disciples of this king probably didn't know there's a shrine to the Big E just outside the city where the disciples of Christ saw their king crucified.
It's really neat to that people, halfway around the world are still into Elvis, and you never expect to see something like this here.
He's right. Most of us expect to see mostly this. Historical shrines, such as the Western or Wailing Wall, the only slice of the original Temple Mount complex built 2,000 years ago. And now it's not uncommon to see this, a bomb squad clearing the walled area because someone left a backpack behind. Or maybe this, stones weighing 30 to 40 tons. Stones perfectly laid in place in the 1st century surrounding the old city of Jerusalem. Tensions remain high in parts of Jerusalem. While Arabs work the tourists and live in parts of the city, they are still considered second-class citizens by the government and the police. It's not uncommon to see the police stopping young Arab workers and asking for identification. Within the Arab quarter of the old city, it's equally as tense, and that tension has hurt business.
How's business?
It's sad.
Sad?
Bad.
Despite what some shopkeepers say, tourism appears to be alive and well. Religious trinkets and T-shirts wallpaper the Arab quarter of the city. And just outside these historic walls, there is always a surprise.
Hosanna forever.
Israel may be a country with distractions and detractors, but for religious pilgrims, such as Don Lapasi of Wendell, the journey was powerful.
Being able to read the Holy Scriptures and then being able to see those actual sights through your eyes, to be able to walk where Jesus walked, to experience it firsthand in person is just incredible and awesome. It adds a total different dimension to reading the Scriptures.
Would you do it again?
Oh, definitely. We'll do it again. We'll do it again.
It's moving each and every time you come over here.
This is probably Israel's most chilling and sobering sight. Yad Vashem, the memorial. It was built to keep alive the memories of the 6 million Jews murdered during the Holocaust.
For somebody who lives through this period, definitely it's the most emotional, painful sort of place one could expect.
As a native Israeli, David Kidron has fought for his country. He's watched as his fellow soldiers were killed, but nothing stirs his emotions like Yad Vashem.
My parents came from areas which were pretty close to the Russian border. Running west would have meant running towards the Germans, as simple as can be. Running east would have meant running from the Germans. So they actually walked for 800 kilometers as refugees along the roadside with packs. My father saw his own mother shot in front of him. He had to bury her.
Throughout this complex are monuments reminding us of the horrors and humiliation of people who were systematically slaughtered. This is the Garden of the Righteous, hundreds of trees planted in remembrance of those who helped Jews escape the German genocide. Among those remembered, Oskar Schindler. 5 years ago, this memorial to children of the Holocaust was added. Candlelight pierces the darkness as the sound of names of children pierce the conscience of everyone who steps through this hall.
The idea that the whole world saw and kept quiet. The idea that it can happen again. When somebody tells you that he's about to throw you into the sea if he's got a chance to, we don't take it lightly. We believe he will. Because we took it lightly 50 years ago.
Easter Sunday in Israel. Canisters of tear gas fly over Bethlehem while Arabs and Israelis fight in the streets. Violence in this country is nothing new, nor is the struggle for peace.
When we think of the peace process, we often think of the White House lawn or the Knesset, possibly even fighting along the West Bank of the Gaza Strip. What we don't think of is a refrigerator. But what's inside here may be helping with the Middle East peace process.
What's inside are these, small jars of donated corneal tissue, tissue that comes from as far away as North Carolina. Some of this tissue that can help the blind to see has been transplanted into Arab eyes by the hands of an Israeli doctor.
I think this is a symbol of having Israeli doctors or Israeli corneas being transplanted in Gaza. I really felt that this could contribute to the peace process.
4 months ago, Dr. Moshe Lazar performed the first transplant surgery ever in the Gaza Strip. 4 Palestinians had their sight restored and now literally view the world through Israeli eyes.
I mean, I always felt that medicine and certainly ophthalmology has no borders, has no limits, and that, I mean, whoever needs a transplant should get it, and whoever needs eye surgery could get it, regardless if this is an Arab or an Israeli.
Some of his patients are enemies.
We, on several occasions, treated Gaza citizens that were injured not in fighting, but they were injured while they were preparing with their hands explosive materials. Several young people that were blinded in both eyes. Once they were here, they were patients as any Israeli patients coming from the next block.
While Hippocrates would approve, some Israelis don't. Dr. Lazar shrugs off the criticism.
There is nobody that is going to suffer from the fact that part of my energy, of my time, is devoted to the population of Gaza.
As the fighting continues, Dr. Moshe Lazar will continue his fight to take medicine where it's needed, to follow the Old Testament teaching of Solomon, and to do whatever he can to help the push for lasting peace in his home country.
I have been always convinced that medicine can do a lot for the peace process. It is probably the easiest way to start the peace process.
We've shown you just some of the reasons so many people and governments are attracted to Israel. This is a land of wise men and shepherds, but it's also a place for scholars and workers. And it's a land of continuing conflict and controversy. During our journey to the Holy Land, we were constantly reminded of the echoes of the past, but we were also able to catch a glimpse of the future. And from our vantage point, it appears the coalition between North Carolina and Israel should last for a long time. From Jerusalem, the city of peace, Shalom.